could get to know that how Paul Broca has discovered the area which is responsible for motor speech activities. Similarly, related to language development, we can see that there is another area was discovered by Carl Wernicke in 19th century, which was again christened by his nickname Wernicke's area. So this part is related to speech, is located in the superior posterior region of temporal lobe, because we will get to know at later stage that there are 4 types of lobes: frontal, posterior, temporal, occipital, which are responsible for different activities. So we can see here that Wernicke area is located in temporal lobe, which is related to the comprehension aspect, like what we have studied here, that Broca area is related to speech, speaking aspect, whereas what is spoken, that is comprehend, that is understood by the area which is known as Wernicke. So these two areas are closely related. So as we are proceeding and getting more about the development of neuropsychology, so we are pondering into more detail about the nervous system. Like those were the developmental aspects where these developments we have studied, and it provided lot of details through which this subject can develop into bigger form. So now, as we know, this is a subject related to brain behavior activities, the relationship between brain and behavior. So it is important to understand what actually the nervous system is. So nervous system is a kind of system which is made up of different neurons, neural connections, and it has different divisions. So one of the important aspect or system is known as central nervous system. This is a part of nervous system which consists of the brain and spinal cord. As we can understand that there are 2 major divisions of the nervous system: central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system actually covers brain and spinal cord, whereas peripheral nervous system is related to the outside of the brain and spinal cord. What actually peripheral nervous system do? It connects the central nervous system to sensory organs such as eye and ear, and other organs of the body, muscles, blood vessels and glands. So peripheral nerves include 12 cranial nerves, the spinal nerves and roots, and what are called the autonomic nerves that are connected specifically with the regulation of the heart muscle, the muscles in the blood vessel walls and glands. So these are basically the voluntary mechanism of the body where peripheral nervous system play important role. Getting more detail, we can also understand how the nervous system, the part of brains, and they actually play different functions. As we know that central nervous system includes brain and spinal cord. So this is, you can see the image of the brain where there are different aspects of the parts of the brain are located. So you can see there is frontal lobe. Next, right to frontal lobe, we can see cerebral cortex, central sulcus, parietal lobe, thalamus, occipital lobe, cerebellar cortex, cerebellum, brain stem, medulla, pons, temporal lobe, hypothalamus, lateral ventricles, corpus callosum. So these are different. We have more parts of the brain which play different roles, but these are very prominent part of the brain which decide and determine different behavioral functions. Like there are 4 different lobes located in the brain: frontal, temporal, parietal and occipital. Frontal lobe is responsible for different higher order cognitive processes and motor actions. Occipital lobe is responsible for visual motor action. Temporal lobe is responsible for auditive function. You can see hypothalamus, it is again very important in the regulation of emotion. It also plays important role in hunger, emotion, sex, motivation. So these are different behavioral aspects which are covered by these brains. Medulla, you can see it is also very important in regulation of breathing and different vital functions. So majorly what we can see, brain is divided into three main aspects like forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Forebrain is the largest and contains cerebrum, that is the area with folds and grooves and certain other structures beneath it. Means forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain, all these different parts of the brain you can find here in the structure. So forebrain is about the largest and which contains the cerebrum. What we can see in the midbrain, it is located underneath the middle of the forebrain. Like first we have forebrain, next to forebrain is midbrain, which acts as a master coordinator for all the messages going in and out of the brain to the spinal cord. And the third important aspect of the brain is hindbrain, that is structures sits underneath the back end of the cerebrum, and it consists of the cerebellum, bones, medulla. You can easily locate here under this structure like medulla, bones, brain stem, cerebellum are given there on the downside of the image, that is under hindbrain. So what we can see, the cerebellum is very important aspect of the brain, which is also known as or called as the little brain, because it looks like a small version of the cerebellum, you can see here. So cerebrum, as we can see, it is known as little brain. It contains all the information about us, that is our intelligence, memory, personality, emotion, speech and ability to feel and move. What we can see, that major activities or major behavior of our as an individual is being controlled or being understood, being resemblance and being regulated by cerebrum. What is important about this structure, that it also contains 4 lobes, that is frontal, parietal, temporal and occipital. So this structure is very important. Again, cerebrum is divided into 2 halves, the right and the left hemisphere. As we know, our brain, our cortex is divided into 2 aspects, like 2 hemisphere. One is known as right hemisphere, second is left hemisphere. So these are connected by a band of nerve fibers, which is called as corpus callosum. You can see here in the figure, corpus callosum is given. So this connects left and right hemisphere. So corpus callosum, what does actually it does? It helps in the 2 hemisphere communicating with each other. Means these are connected to each other with corpus callosum, so they also make communication with each of the hemisphere, because brain functions in coordination with each part of the brain. Nothing works in isolation. So that way left and right hemisphere actually works in coordination with each of the hemisphere. So what is important about this brain, that there is a cortex which is actually known as grey matter. So from cortex, what actually it is done, the information is directed to other parts of the nervous system for further processing. So cortex is very important in that sense, that it receives information and it transmits the further information to the other aspects, other parts of the nervous system. There is another important part which we have seen in the image, that is hypothalamus, that is the part of the forebrain which controls the pulse, thirst, appetite and sleep, which are actually automatic processes. As we are studying about different parts of the brain, so cerebellum is there, which is responsible for balance, movement and coordination. Suppose you are moving on road or any platform, so you require to have balance. Suppose you are running, when you stop, you need to take a break, you need to make a balance of your body. So this all activities of movement, action, balance that needs coordination, and it actually is carried out by the cerebellum. Cerebellum is responsible for those balancing act and movement. Also, you can see here in the image there is pons and medulla. So what pons and medulla do? These are often called the brain stem. You can see it is located on the end of the brain, so that way it is brain stem. What it does, it takes in, sends out and coordinates all of the brain's messages. Whatever brain receives, all those messages are transmitted. So receiving and transmitting is the main process of this pons and medulla. It also controls many of the body's automatic functions like breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, swallowing, digestion and blinking. So medulla and pons are very vital parts of the brain which are responsible for many automatic functions of the body. We have gathered many of the information about the brain and its functions, brain and its different parts and the role played by different parts in regulating and controlling our behavior. So in that sense, neuropsychology is a branch which covers the studies of all those brain organs, brain parts and its role in determining, deciding, regulating and controlling the behavior. So in that sense, role and functions of neuropsychologists can be observed. What is true about neuropsychologists? What is known, that is, they are not medical doctors. They are the doctors of psychology, not of the medical field, but their area of study is concentrated on the brain and its functions. They are also involved in neuropsychological testing, which is designed to determine the brain's capacity with respect to different psychological behavior like short and long term memory, abstract reasoning, attention, concentration, executive functioning, motor skills and other cognitive and psychological factors. So neuropsychologist helps in facilitating all those processes of neuropsychological testing, which helps in understanding about neuropsychological functioning of an individual. Also, neuropsychologists use different set of batteries of tests to triangulate the brain's functioning, and through that triangulation they determine whether the brain is functioning as it should. Because when brain is functioning at optimal level, so all those responses are well done, well controlled, well regulated. But when there is malfunctioning in any parts of the brain, so it also affects the psychological responses and behavior. So neuropsychologists try to understand if there is any damage, any irregularities in functioning, so that can be diagnosed by set of batteries, set of tests, which captures memory, attention, concentration, motivation and other different areas of functioning like intelligence, attention, motor activities. All those functions are well judged and tested by neuropsychologists. So in terms of battery, as we know, it is a set of different tests which may include one of two such batteries, like you can see here the Halstead-Rayton or the Luria-Nebraska battery. So these are the batteries which are used by neuropsychologists to understand those behavioral responses or behavior, to understand any deficit in neurological or neuropsychological functioning. So when we use such batteries, so what we get through the results, we can easily get accurate profile of the pattern of deficits which correlate to specific types of brain injury. So in that sense, neuropsychologists, by using these test batteries becomes able to find out the damage in the brain parts, or to try to get the location of brain damage. If any part of the brain is damaged, so it can be easily diagnosed through these test batteries. So as we know, neuropsychologists use different set of batteries. So it is also important to know what major domains of neuropsychological functioning are tested through these examinations, because neuropsychologists, their area of functioning, their area of their role is actually making examination, testing, which are useful in measuring different categories of functioning, which may include different set of behaviors. As we have talked about, like intellectual functioning is tested, the level of intelligence. In many of our behavior, intelligence is important. So if we are functioning to sub level of intelligence, so definitely our behavior will be affected. We will not be able to respond accordingly quickly where smart work is needed. So at level of deficit can be known through these test batteries by testing intellectual functioning. Also, academic achievement is one of the aspects, because academic achievement is required to achieve many of the jobs, many of the skills. So if there is deficit in intellectual functioning, our academic achievement will also be affected. So what are different segment of academic achievement is affected that can also be tested through neuropsychological functioning? If there is any problem in calculation, speech, comprehension, so academic achievement will be affected. So these, deficits can be easily tested through these psychological batteries. So language processes is again an important domain. Means language is a major way of communication. Through these language processing, we not only able to speak but also to comprehend. So speech and comprehension are two major aspects which are tested under language processing. Also we have visuospatial processing, like what we perceive, what we imagine, that happens in a specific area. So visuospatial responses are required to process any signals. So important is to detect what is available in the visuospatial domain. That processing is also required to respond accordingly. Also we need to pay attention and show concentration for different activities. If you are writing any book, studying any material, watching any TV programs, so you need to pay some attention or concentration to understand what is being delivered, what is given in the text. That all require these important neuropsychological functioning. Along with those functioning, we can also have verbal learning and memory, visual learning, executive functions, speed of processing, like how we respond quickly or as per requirement. We have to respond while you are typing, looking at the content and then making speed to type as per requirement. Suppose you are driving a car, so what there would be speed to capture any sort of distance at a particular time. So that again requires processing along with attention, concentration. Also under neuropsychological functioning, sensory perceptual functions are also tested. Also, we need to judge motor speed and strength. Suppose you have to hold any object, so there should be some strength, muscular strength, which needs to capture or hold any object for a particular time. If you don't have that speed and strength, so definitely you will drop the object and it may capture any loss. Also, under neuropsychological functioning, there are some personality assessments carried out. Motivational aspects are tested. So, through those neuropsychological functioning, there are set of functioning which are important for our survival. So, taking those aspects of functioning, neuropsychologists diagnose the problem existed in any human being. So, through those neuropsychological testing, we can get different diagnostic clarifications, and if there is any clinical severity for clients or patients with obvious or supposed cognitive deficits. So, the patients or clients being tested for neuropsychological diagnosis, they may have history of many of the following problems, which we can see here, like if there is any head injury, if there is any damage through accident or any other reasons, if there is any head injury, so it may have severe complications. So that can also be judged, can be tested through neuropsychological diagnosis. Also, if client has any failure to achieve developmental milestones, you may see around yourself, your locality, that there are some students who cannot cope to their class. They may have very young and growing stage, like suppose they are 15, they must have cleared their 9th or 10th standard, but sometimes you can find they are still there to substandard level, 5th or 6th. They are not able to cope their classmates. So they are failing to achieve the developmental milestones required. So not only academic but also physiological development is also affected. So it may have some neurological causes. Also, they may have some learning or attention deficits that may again affect their academic and daily functioning. Also, we can see what can be done under diagnosis, that there are some drugs, alcohol consumption or maternal illness in utero that can have negative impact. Also, there are different problems, diseases and deficiencies which can be tested in neuropsychological diagnosis. So, in that context, we can see that neuropsychology is an emerging branch of psychology which actually delves into understanding the relation between human behavior and brain, how brain play important role in behavior that is important to see under neuropsychology. Hope it was well understood and giving you insight about human brain and behavior. Thank you.